it's such a tragedy. It's such an awful thing to have happened. Let's talk to Mark Field, former Foreign Office Minister and author. Mark, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. It's a pleasure to be with you here, Mike.
Yeah, very good to see you. We got plenty of political stories to get stuck into, but let me ask you about your view of the Charlie Kirk situation and how we've somehow arrived at this dreadful place in society now, Western society, where we can't disagree with each other without sort of hating each other.
It is dreadful, and it isn't just social media. I know a lot of people focus on the sewer sometimes that is social media, but only in the last week here in the UK, you've seen a major columnist of a major newspaper, plus a senior Labour politician referring to Nigel Farage as being, like Hitler.
Yeah.
And so the worry is we've got to tone down some of this sort of hysteria that is a part of political discourse. And, the worry I have, and is of course a total personal tragedy, two very young children left without a father after this political assassination, or so it seems. But the worry I have is here, closer to home here in the UK. Over the past 10 years, two MPs have been murdered, assassinated in the course of doing their day-to-day duties. I think this is going to put a lot of people off going into politics, and understandably. And I have to say, I've got teenage children now, and it was a factor that was involved in my thinking when I left politics in 2019. That the discourse had become that much more hysterical, and everyone wants to play their part in political life. I hope that we can have ideas there, but I don't think we should be complacent this morning when we look at this. I mean, it's understandable to talk about the gun laws and how they operate in the US, but there are issues that could equally apply here in the UK and indeed across the Western world if we don't have open discourse rather than resorting, as you say, to violence, or essentially living in these sort of echo chambers where you don't in any way even respect the idea that there is a marketplace for different political views.
No, of course. I mean, Jeremy Clarkson tweeted out last night, for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely frightened about being a newspaper columnist.
Yeah, and listen, there's some hyperbole that will go on with these sorts of matters, but I think that's right, and there is just that sense that everyone is now a little bit more aware of their security if you're in any form of public life, or as you say, if you're a journalist or a blogger or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely right. And heaven forbid that kind of, the culture becomes worse than it is already. But you're right. It's something that we all have to think about. Let's talk about some of the big political stories, though, this morning, because Peter Mandelson would have been the biggest story of all time, I think, this morning. It still is on many of the front pages anyway. But it's extraordinary kind of evaporation of his credibility, which has happened over the last sort of 48 hours, where, only yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions, Keir Starmer said that he gave him his full backing. He's already apologised for, allowing himself to be convinced that the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein was a good guy. I mean, it's now been completely washed away, because overnight these emails have come out, and thanks very much to Harry Cole for getting an interview with Mandelson. These emails have come out in which he said, when he was actually convicted, fight for an early release as he was being jailed for child sex offences. Make sure you read The Art of War, make sure you're always strategising, make sure that you're always preparing for the next opportunity. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. Listen, Peter Mandelson's a huge, energetic and very effective political operator. There's no doubt about that. Notoriously, and all of us in political life have got our Achilles heels. I think for him, he's always been notoriously bedazzled by being around very powerful and very wealthy people, I think the money in particular. And I think in relation to Epstein, again, I suspect there's an even bigger cache of emails that's going to come through. You could take a charitable view, and then there is a charitable view that you stand by your friends in times of trouble. The less charitable view, of course, is that Mandelson realised that people were going to drop Epstein like a stone, and he saw great financial and economic opportunities that would come out of remaining involved with that individual. And I suspect, again, we're probably going to see a little bit more of exactly what's happened. I'm always reluctant to make too many predictions about people's longevity, but I think it is highly unlikely.
I mean, I guess
Peter Mandelson will be in place by this time next week. So, obviously we've got the crucial thing of the state visit from Donald Trump and his entourage next week. my instinct is that he'll be gone by then. I can't see how, given this level of controversy. And I think there's been this idea that somehow, well, Keir Starmer won't want to get rid of Mandelson because he's a sort of firewall against the allegations that are being made against Trump and other powerful people in relation to Epstein. But I don't think that's going to hold true. And I think it's also worth remembering, actually in the context of the Epstein thing, remember Prince Andrew, whose career has been destroyed by historical connections with Epstein. The moment that Epstein was charged, Andrew did step away from the scene. So in many ways, Mandelson's involvement is more serious.
Yeah. But I mean, again, the reflection will then come back to Keir Starmer, because as I said, it was only yesterday that he gave him his full backing. And now we wake up once again to a bunch of newspaper headlines where he must feel rather foolish. And in every single case since Keir Starmer's been Prime Minister, every single person that's had to resign from his cabinet. I mean, this is almost like a carbon copy of what happened last week with Angela Rayner, because this time last week, people were saying, oh, she's going to hang on. Keir doesn't want her to go anywhere. He's going to make sure he protects her. He's going to keep her in there because he needs her to keep placating the left wing of the party. And then, I mean, I kept predicting she was gone. And then by Friday, sure enough, she was gone.
Right, you're absolutely spot on. You're absolutely right. Of course, the slight alibi that Keir Starmer had last week, of course, was going to be an independent report, and once that had put the black spot on Angela Rayner, it really was all over. This is going to be more difficult. Clearly, we're now in the area of the court of public opinion. Evidently, very, very many Labour MPs feel very uneasy about Mandelson's continuation in office. Yeah. They're not necessarily expressing that on a date, at least publicly, but I think privately they realise that it is going to be over. But this ultimately is a decision that Starmer has to make. I don't think that there's going to be something there, or indeed Mandelson may take the view that he needs to fall on his sword, and he's done so, as we know, several times before in what has been a controversial career. As I say, he is a highly effective operator. Everyone who ever worked with him as civil servant says that this is a man of great political talent, but as I say, there are some weaknesses. I think one of the biggest weaknesses has been his love of being around powerful and moneyed people.
Yes, indeed. Well, he's had to resign twice from the previous government he was in, hasn't he? Once because he took a rather large loan from Geoffrey Robinson and forgot to declare it. And then when he got himself embroiled with the Hinduja brothers and got them a passport which was having them seen to be jumping the queue. He seems, I mean, the other way of looking at it, of course, is that he's got incredibly bad judgment. He doesn't seem to think that things that he does will not come back to haunt him.
Well, the one thing I would say in politics, Mike, is that a lot of stuff goes on that never gets picked up by the press. So there are some people who obviously get more attracted to controversy, but there are others who do get away with these things. So, as I say, he has a career that also reflects some tremendous achievements and ability that is there. But yes, I think Keir Starmer is going to have to make a very difficult decision potentially over the next 48, 72 hours. Right. It may be made for him by Mandelson himself, but unlike last week, as I say, he's not going to have the alibi of an independent report that makes the decision for him.
No, quite. Kemi Badenoch said this today. Yesterday, I called for Mandelson to go. The victims of Epstein are calling for Mandelson to go. Now we hear most Labour MPs want Mandelson gone, but still Keir Starmer dithers and delays. Our Prime Minister has no backbone, no principles, and no idea. He's weak. Hard to disagree with that, really, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, everyone has to play the political game here, and clearly Kemi Badenoch is trying to get some political capital here, which I entirely understand. I mean, obviously it is an issue that puts Keir Starmer on the spot. Often with these things, you look back at it and think, well, actually try and act as quickly as you can, because if you let the thing drag on and this goes to a second, third, fourth, fifth day of headlines, none of this is going to look very good. But as I say, I think it's very difficult to see how, in the circumstances, and particularly with the state visit next week, that Peter Mandelson can remain in place.
No, quite. You've just written a book, I understand, called The End of an Era, The Decline and Fall of the Tory Party. We spoke to Nadine Dorries this week, who declared the Tory Party to be dead on Friday when she went off to Tory reform. Is it finished, the Tory Party? Can it come back?
Listen, I don't think it's dead. I think one of the observations I make, I left Parliament in 2019, but one of the observations is that it is clearly got a great historical basis to it, and therefore very difficult to see how it dies. But is it really going to be a viable party of government anytime soon. And the difficulty is that, you know, when you've had a massive defeat like they did in 2024, how is it that you can recover? And of course, I think what has been unusual this time around is just how quickly things have unravelled for the incoming Labour government. And of course, it only had 33.7% of the vote, which was the sixth worst vote share in the 22 elections since the Second World War, and 33.7% is normally a losing percentage.
Yeah.
So they had this massive landslide. So it was already slightly artificial. But I think from the Tories' perspective, we just needed a period when, you know, people can forget and, you know, to try to rebuild after 14 years, which had not been particularly successful economically and in other ways. And there were issues such as Brexit and obviously the pandemic that made life difficult for the Conservatives. But the contrast, again, after 1997, obviously everything was set pretty fair for the first two terms for Blair and Brown, and it allowed the Conservatives to rebuild in opposition. They haven't really had the luxury this time, and obviously with the rise of Reform UK and a sense, I think, from the public out there that they want something different. They've had enough of the duopoly, and I think one of the great ironies of the last election was everyone talked, and particularly the Labour Party and Keir Starmer talked about the change election. In many ways, it's been continuity since Labour have got in. And I did detect this, even though I wrote about this before the last election. And my instinct always then was it's going to be the 2028-29 election that will be the real change election for the UK. Either the radical reforms, rather like what happened in the 1970s, with a new configuration in place, or it could be that Labour recovers. I mean, it's difficult to see how that happens, but anything can happen in politics. I think one of the interesting things, if you look at, you know, the Thatcher and Blair governments, when they obviously had a period of a decade in office in both cases, it was their second terms that were far more radical. But I think the one thing that's very evident is this country needs some fundamental institutional reform. It needs a massive shake-up. And I think the public there have their ears open, at least, of doing it in a very different way. And the duopoly that we've been used to for the last 100 years of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party may well be coming to an end.
Yeah, I think that's right. Mark, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Mark Field, former Foreign Office Minister and author, of course. Let's get a voice.